It's on you.
What's going on, baby? It's the American Hammer here, and I'm hyped and ready to rock and roll for the Three Count podcast. Keeping it simple, keeping it plain, Jane, and having a nice conversation, baby.
Do you wanna get live with me? Do you really wanna ride with me?
Welcome everybody to another great edition of the Three Count Podcast presents Now Entering, and I'm your host, Clifford Red Dog Miller, the man that leads you up that mountain called wrestling. And by season 4 in our 340 something episode, I would just hope you say it with me. I am your Sherpa because, like your tribal chief, acknowledge me. But like every good Sherpa, you gotta ask someone who's been there, done that, and can do it more efficiently than you can. That's why it's never about me. It's about who's entering the ring. So who's entering the ring? You can find this man at AXW. You can find this man at the Wrestling Open, CZW, Outbreak, PCWA, and so much more. He is bold. He's got muscles. He's got that feathered mullet. He is the man, the myth, the legend, the man known as the American Hammer.
What's going on, man? How you feel? That was a beautiful introduction, man. You got me feeling like a superstar right now. Thank you, brother.
Hey, let's get it, man. No, I'm hyped, man, because we actually met each other at quarantine for like a random taping, and then we just kind of kept running into each other just here or there, and then you made your debut at the Wrestling Open, and I was like, hey, yo, this is fate. We got to make this thing happen.
Yes, 110%. It's crazy, how long ago the quarantine stuff was, and we met each other sort of right off the rip, like right when I started doing shows and stuff, like very early on, back when Outbreak was still cooking, baby. Outbreak quarantine, and those were good times, holding it down in the dungeon, man, just recording those on those cold days. It was sick. It was a great time.
It was definitely cold days. We're all back there just like, God, man, we need to get this match going because I'm cold and I want to warm up.
Yeah, man, yeah. But it was super dope when especially I never really had an experience with a crowd before at that point. But even just the wrestlers getting into it, rallying behind the people to help bring up some of the energy, especially when there was a couple tapings a day or something like that. So it was nice vibes.
Yeah, definitely. And so, I followed you, and then we ran into each other again at AXW, part of Martin Stone's seminar.
Yes.
And then I wanted to be like, hey, because I've been following you kind of close, ever since we met at quarantine. So I've been like, hey, you're just kind of peeping in and out. And I was like, yo, I love the energy this guy brings. He's got all this hypeness. I was like, of course, I got to have this guy come on the podcast because, yeah, this is just great fun.
Hell yeah. And I definitely am hyped to be on, man.
So let me ask, man, let me start this out. Who's Matt Quay?
I mean, that is a loaded question. That's a very loaded question. I think when we break it down on what Matt Quay is, I don't think it differs too much from what the American Hammer is. I mean, as you can see what I got right now, I got the Rocky poster right there that I could bang off, word for word off the top of my head, about how hard you hit. It's about how hard you could get hit and keep moving forward, how much you could take and keep moving forward. That's how winning is done. I like to try to take that mindset into pro wrestling, into life at all times. Obviously life is difficult. It has its ebbs and its flows of how you think and how you feel about stuff, but it's all about just sort of pulling it in together, getting back up, and getting back to work. So I'm just about persistent progression, getting back up, and pursuing your passions, man, all while trying to keep it all centered,
That's one of the hardest things to do, though, is there's always something going on, so you always want to make sure you're keeping in that same movement and keep that same flow. And it's one of those things I figured out too, getting in this business, my whole idea was I just wanted to get into the business because I was like, yeah, why not? Pro wrestling is one of my things I've been following since I was a kid, and I was like, I want to get into this. I want to get into this because I just want to see if I can hang and bang. And now that I've been doing this for a couple of years, I'm like, all right, well, I know I can hang and bang. Now, how much further can we really take this? And then you're right. There's been lots of ups and downs that go into this business. And I don't think people prepare. I think everybody that gets into the business suddenly thinks, oh man, I'm in. All right, well, WWE will call me any day. And it's nah, man, there's a lot more work to do.
That's facts. And back to the Rocky poster, it ain't all sunshine and rainbows, man. When you're pursuing a passion, when you're pursuing a dream, and when you have goals, you're going to fall down. It's going to get tough. It's going to get a little difficult up here. You just got to re-navigate, think correctly, think positively, and just give your best foot forward and just live in the moment. Very difficult to do, but
it's
very good for this business.
It's funny because you mentioned that, right? Living in the moment, and that's like such a beautiful way of saying things, because it took me even just to like this last year, right? And when I had moved to Massachusetts from Maryland, and when I was in Maryland, like I was always just like, yo, I got the next show coming up, and I was always worried about the next show. Even when I was at a show, I'd be like, all right, so we have this, we got to do this, and this. I'm worried about the next moment. And it was when I was reading Be Like Water, the Bruce Lee book, right? And as I'm like reading it, and like I'm like listening, he's talking about this scene in the movie Into the Dragon, right, where him and his student are like training, and he's like, yo, throw me a roundhouse kick. So his student throws like this like beautiful like roundhouse kick. He's like, yo, what is this, a demonstration? He's like, no, hit me. He's like, so the guy then throws like an angry roundhouse kick, and he's like, no. He's like, you're misunderstanding what I'm saying. He's like, be in the moment with me when you do this. And they didn't talk about anything, but this moment like flows so beautifully. And the funny part was it was a shoot. Like they were really thrown back and forth. They were just caught in the moment. And so finally Bruce like stopped it, and he was just like, all right, how do you feel? And so the student went to think, he smacked him. He was like, no. How do you feel? He's like, right now, this moment. It's such a beautiful thing. Like you saying, like, you just got to be present, be in the moment, and enjoy what's going on.
That's facts, man. And that is a beautiful metaphor for pro wrestling and sort of what we do in the ring and what we do, like each show, because I think it's so important to, especially be like, that's a wonderful lesson of life. You need to currently be in the present moment in life at all times. And that's one of the hardest things to do because it can always bounce around. And it's the same thing with pro wrestling. Same thing when you're in the ring, same thing when you're at a show, same thing when you're about, you're thinking about the next show, as you were saying, or even in the match, when you're thinking about the next thing, what's going to happen next, what's going to come next. Just be there, be in that moment, feel it flow like water. And only then will you get truly how you feel in that moment, because a lot of wrestling is reacting, not thinking, but reacting. So that's an incredible analogy right there.
It was funny because like recently I had been at a show in Springfield, Massachusetts, right? And I had all these things planned out, like what I wanted to do in the match. And so I was like, all right, well, let me run out here. Let me go have fun, like jump, talk to the crowd and stuff. And everything kind of played off that way, right? So I come out, mind you, we're in an ice rink, and there's like all these like pads on the ground, and the pads are gaining condensation, right? Because they're obviously. So as I'm running around the ring, I hook around, and as I come, my foot slips and I fall, hit the ground. I pop back up, and I'm like, yo, we're safe. Everything is great.
Yeah.
And I was like,
you call it like a baseball, like safe. Nice, nice.
I jump back in the ring, and I jump back in the ring, and my friend Eric Ecton, right, from Maryland, actually was like, he goes, yeah, is that what we do, idiot? We just like fall randomly. We're at an ice rink. We're not in a baseball field. And I was like, shut up. It just happens. It was black ice. I didn't see it. And then, so not even like 3 minutes later, he gets thrown out the ring. He puts his feet down, slips out, and falls. And he's like, I owe Cliff the biggest apology. But it was just the moment that like I slipped, I fell, and I was like, there's like two things you could have done. You could have just laid there.
Yeah.
And just whatever. Or you just pop back up, and it's my character is kind of like a comedic mercenary. So I was like, all right, we gotta get up, we gotta play this off, keep it moving.
And that's valid. And bro, that's what you got to do, especially in those moments. And you'll find it's crazy how naturally the things will just kind of tie in, like the fact of like, because you're saying how like he was playing to it in the match, or was he roasting you like backstage, or like he roasted you like in the ring after you fell?
In the ring.
Yeah, so then that's beautiful. Like 3 minutes later during the match, he goes outside, then he slips. Like that's the beauty of the spontaneity of pro wrestling, where it's like and that goes to show that not every mess up is bad. And that's sort of a metaphor of life too, for failure and messing up. Of like if you fall down and you decide to get up as you did and make the best of that moment, something will come along a little bit later that will make that moment even better, make that bad moment great. So like that's the beauty of pro wrestling, and kind of ties into life a little bit. That's super cool. That's super cool.
What brought you into the business?
So I mean, pro wrestling was always something that I loved since I was 11. First thing I saw was the CM Punk Pipe Bomb promo. Played SmackDown versus Raw 2008 all night on the 24/7 mode, and I was hooked. And coming up, I loved wrestling. I would always, I would wrestle with my friends. We'd throw the cushions down. We had like a whole league that we would do, as I'm sure like everybody did.
Yep.
And So when I turned 18, I decided to start training. I trained at Chikar for like a year and a half until my car broke down at the King of Trios in Reading. My car broke down, had to take it to the shop, didn't have it for a gripski because I didn't really have the money to take it out. And I said, you know what? I'm just going to take a little time off of wrestling. I was doing college at the time. I was rocking and rolling with the normal life. And then, I went through a little bit of a breakup, went through a little bit of some family stuff. And that's when I just it was all just pent up and built up. And I was just like, I don't love this school stuff. I don't want to do this school stuff. I love pro wrestling. And I truly, truly believe that if I give my all to this, then I could make something out of it. So then that's when I decided, through a little bit of pain, and but also through passion, I decided to pursue that. And I've just taken these last 2 years living in the moment, enjoying the moments, and truly embracing what pro wrestling is, which is a beautiful outlet that I love and gives me a tremendous feeling when I get to feel the energy of that crowd. And when you have a match that you're proud of, it's a truly wonderful thing. It's a truly wonderful thing. So that's kind of what got me rocking and rolling into it. Now I'm in, I'm locked in, and I'm hoping to go 25 plus years. So that's I'm ready to rock, and I'm ready for the ups and downs of the business. I know it's going to be a crazy ride, but I'm in the car for it, baby.
You mentioned something, man, that just like it gives you guys this big outlet, right? And I think that's like an important thing because that's ultimately what wrestling became to me, right? Like I came out of the Air Force. I really didn't know what I was wanting to do, and I was just trying to figure out like what this life is all about and where I wanted to be at, right? I just knew like eventually I wanted to give to like a bigger purpose, but I just didn't know what that purpose was. And so when I got into pro wrestling, and I took my first couple bumps, and then I got into a show, and I took more bumps, and then I got into other shows, and just kept working. I realized like this was like my mental escape. Like mentally, it's something about the crowd hitting the mat, and like whatever, putting on a performance for the crowd. It was just on another level for me that I was like, I need this to help myself feel sane. And maybe it's kind of twisted because it's like let's be real. Like pro wrestling is a form of self-harm. Like we are literally just throwing ourselves on the mat and getting picked up and beat up.
For the reaction of the people, it is, and it's for the physicality too. I think a lot of reasons why it is an outlet is that physical outlet, especially people who are into physicality sports and weren't able to continue that, or anybody who just sort of likes that physical contact and making it feel like you're in it. And I think that also goes to being in the moment. Like I think why it's such a great outlet is because when you're in the ring and when you're fully locked into the ring and when you're fully feeling the reaction and just moving and reacting off of that reaction, you're fully in the moment. And that's like being fully in the moment is being like fully in touch with the universe itself. And I think that's why that's such a tremendous outlet for so many people in pro wrestling. And it's a tremendous outlet for people who enjoy watching wrestling. It's time to fully be in the moment, let everything else go, and just flow as a collective of, whether it's 100 people or 100,000 people, it's a collective group of people all in the same moment together, just like feeling, So I think that's why it's such a great outlet for people.
Yeah, no doubt. So seeing how we all have these kind of stories, you've been in for a few years now, and so it's kind of like fun to ask this question, right? But what's the worst bump you've taken?
That's a good question. That's a good question. The worst bump I've taken. I mean, honestly, there's been a couple bumps. I mean, I just took a body slam on the wooden floor at the last CZW show. That one it wasn't too bad. But if I had to think of bumps an unintentional bump that kind of really jacked me up, that really hurt the most. I was doing I had this match, and there was I guess it was sort of like almost like hockey rink type cement floors. And so I was going to ram the guy into the post, and there was some soda that got spilled on the ground. So it was super slippery. And as I threw him into the post, I got posted. It was, I think I got posted. And as I got posted, I sort of slipped, wasn't able to take the bump as well as I wanted to, and my left knee whacked right into the corner, and it hurt. I still got like a little lump protruding out. I don't know if it's happened like maybe a year ago, a little over. Feels totally fine now, but I was limping for about a week, so that might have been like my worst, my most painful bump.
I remember like I've told this story a few times like on the show now. My worst bump, right? It was like March, and where I trained at in Baltimore, it was outdoors. So it's March, it's cold, and I had only been training for like a couple weeks, but I was like, yo, like Akira Tozawa's like giant senton bump, like let me get that. Because I was like, I want to do that move and hit people with it. And I took that first bump, and the mat, even the ring wasn't warmed up. Like it was just
bro, out in the cold, bro. That's crazy.
Yeah, I felt all of that. Like,
I could imagine, bro. Oh my gosh. So you just like you wanted to practice the bump?
Yeah.
So you just like, oh,
off the top rope and everything. No,
that takes some cojones, brother. That takes some cojones. That's crazy.
I around so
That's
hard. No spring, just straight kung. I was like, oh.
The wind had to be knocked right out of you, straight up. Oh my gosh.
And then like, and what makes it funny was like Sicken looked me in the face and he was like, "Did we learn a lesson today?" I was like, "Yeah, we did a lot."
yeah. Got to preserve the bumps, and that's something. That's something I'm still working on a little bit of learning. The bump card and learning to like, all right, take it, relax here a little bit, and you can maybe go a little crazier here, and just kind of learning that sort of ebb and flow, protecting yourself in pro wrestling, which you got to take a good amount of crappy bumps to realize that, which I'm sure we both have.
Well, what's funny is that I've learned at other schools, right? That I've learned from other people that go to other schools. Like I'm not gonna mention the school's name, but the person who if they're paying attention, don't know. But their trainer teaches them to take the bumps wrong, so they know how it sucks, so that they know how to take it right. And I thought that was a very interesting concept that like you would teach someone wrong, right? Because they're like, "Hey, yo, did that suck? Yeah, okay. Well, then let's do this and change this up, so that way you know how to do it right, so that way you don't have to do it wrong." And I was like, "It's a great concept." I was like, I could never imagine like. I remember I was helping a kid learn how to do a front bump, right, or a face bump, and he just. I told him, I was like, listen, you don't put your leg out to the side, protect the boys, like as you hit, and I was telling him like fall into the diamond. And man, this kid just jumped into it, flat, hips thrusted out front, and then all you hear is
yeah. You gotta be careful with the front bumps, the face bumps. You gotta be careful with those, man. You gotta make sure you get that down pat, man. But I do think I think that's a very interesting method. I think if they take the bumps, I think you show them how to do it correctly. If they do it incorrectly, maybe you're like, all right, do the bump like that again, or like, they realize after they take the bump, like, hey, man, that sucks. I definitely don't need like the dude who took the, you told him how to do it, and he took the bump wrong, so now he knows how it feels to do it wrong. So you better correct it, or else it's gonna suck again next time. So.
And what was so funny is that everybody watched that man take that bump wrong, and they all started doing it correctly. And I was like, "No, it's weird." I was like, "It's weird."
That's valid.
And the lesson that we learned today, right? And I've learned this. I learned this back in like my sophomore, junior year in high school, right? Was a foolish man will learn from his mistakes, while wise men will learn from the mistakes of others. And I'm like, that is deep. And so watching this man flatten down, just smash his dick into the mat, and then like just curl up, and everybody else was like, all right, well, Cliff told us
I ain't doing that. They learned from somebody else's failure. So that's a dope saying. That's a very dope saying. But that's that's a rough bump.
Yeah. Hey, so speaking of like lessons learned and bumps taken and stuff like that, what's one of the hardest lessons that you've had to learn being in the business?
Patience. I think patience is probably the biggest one. Patience and gratitude, being patient for what's to come, not really trying to rush anything, and also being grateful for the moments that I've had, for what I have, but also still being hungry. Finding that balance of patience, of being content where you are in the moment and being grateful for everything that you have around you, but also still having that hunger to sort of drive your next step. But I think that's one of the beauties of pro wrestling, of like, it's also going to teach you resilience. I feel like it's taught me a good bit of resilience because, fairly before in my life, like there have been times where, I've, like sporting stuff I've pushed through, but eventually I've always sort of conceded. And with pro wrestling, there's been times where I failed, fallen on my face, got humiliated, but I got back up, rallied, and did even better the next time. And I think that's one of the great things of pro wrestling, of you can fail so many times, and it's important to fail. I mean, with anything, it's important to fail, but with pro wrestling, you need that failure. You need those reps, which kind of goes into the patience, and you need to have gratitude for those failures because they make those successful moments even better. And, like I've been grateful to have, a lot of great moments within these independent wrestling companies, and before I'd find myself, just kind of wanting and striving for more. But through that patience and just sort of having gratitude that I've been blessed enough to even have these specific moments and these specific, instances with, like, my family get to see these moments and stuff like that. And just having gratitude for that, but still having the hunger to continue to drive. And I think that's a lot of what pro wrestling teaches, like, it teaches patience, persistence, resilience, and gratitude. But it's but with the same, on the same coin, you flip it over and it's tails. Pro wrestling also has a lot of negativity, a lot of, greed, a lot of people just thirsting for more, a lot of power hungry people, a lot of fear. So, it's just like with life, you really choose what route you want to take with that. But I think pro wrestling has taught me a lot of valuable lessons. And on top of it all, work ethic, working hard. I've never worked as hard for anything in my life than pro wrestling, and it's taught me how important that is in all facets of life.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things that's like, as you get into this business, you realize, like, man, like I gotta keep putting in the work and keep getting mastering my craft, as most people would call it, right?
Yes.
And the more you put into it, the more you're gonna get out of it. It's really weird. What's I don't want to say weird because other people are like, well, duh, that's what's happening. But what I think about was I've heard other people say this, right? Like, whatever your output is, it should be your input, right? So if you're putting out, like, going to training and stuff like that, and you're
Yeah.
working out at the gym and you're doing all for pro wrestling, you should be at, like, something between like 4 to 8 hours. But if you're doing 4 to 8 hours, you should be doing 4 to 8 hours of, like, match studying too. And that's how you're gonna learn to get those reps and stuff. And I
Yep.
really believe that. I started thinking about that. So I started implementing stuff like watching other match films. And I'm not and I know, like, when you're normally at schools and stuff like that, there'll be something that people will tell you to do is like watch this match and break it down. But it was something that I had learned from other wrestlers that was like, well, you should watch the match at least 3 times, right?
Yeah.
Once watch
Yeah.
it because you wanted to watch the match, and then watch, the wrestlers and their reaction. And then the next time, just mute everything and just watch the crowd. And I was like, yo, that's like an interesting concept on, like, certain spots. Because, like, by the time you watch it the third time, you already know everything that's gonna
Yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
So you should be able to be like, all right, this is that moment that happens. And it's crazy to think back that, like, when I watch those matches and stuff like that, I'm like, bro, this is the breakdown of this is wild. So
Yeah.
I've, like, re started to re-study matches, I guess, if that's the right word to say.
And that's
And
crazy. That might have just added a whole new thing to my game, because I've heard of watching them, rewatching them, watching them sort of one way, and then watching again the other way. But I think you might have just put me on to something here. So I might have to start rewatching some matches and watch them. Just watch to see the crowd's reaction. So that's very valid. Yeah, hell yeah.
everybody here, man, you all getting lessons, right? This is why we can say, like, this is now entering 101 because, it's an education lesson, right? You get
Yeah.
this. All right, man. But before we hop into my favorite segment of the podcast, I do want to ask this one question. I haven't asked it in a little bit, and sorry for that for those who've been, like, consistently watching. But seeing that you've been traveling around, I need one do and one don't of the locker room.
Ooh. Ooh. Oh, one do and one don't of the locker room. I'll say one do. One do would be, just try to be as cool and copacetic with everybody as you possibly can be. Just be super chill with everybody around, and then, be gracious, be giving, to have patience with the people in the locker room. It can be very easy to, get frustrated at certain things, especially if you're in a cramped room or it's crowded or, somebody, or, there's like one chair that's there, then it's taken, and it's just like, we're all wrestlers trying to understand and make it in here. I think if we all just kind of had each other's backs and, helped each other out a little bit more, like, hey man, you want this chair here. It's like, whatever. Little stuff like that. I think that's a big do of the locker room. And I think a big don't is, well, I would wash your gear. Do wash your gear. One of the don'ts is a do. Do wash your gear. Because honestly, I'm a pretty easygoing guy. It doesn't take too much to really irk me or, piss me off. But like, if your gear kind of stinks, man, that's a little bit of like, oh, come on, man. It's like, dude, but that's like, that's really kind of the biggest one I could think of. Yeah, and also just don't be a D-bag. Those are like the don'ts, and I think those are pretty common just all around the wrestling bubble.
It's funny for me, like one of the don'ts that I kind of like touch on every once in a while, and I didn't know this was a thing, and I didn't learn this lesson, right? Personally, I learned this lesson because of somebody else. Don't fall asleep in the locker room.
Ooh, why did they get the old little ripski? They got ripped for falling asleep.
A couple people were making fun, and then also that person has not been back in the locker room as far as I know to this day at a certain promotion.
Wow.
So it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, don't do that. Don't be that
guy. That's a good one. Don't be catching some Z's in the locker room. That's valid. That's valid.
All right, Batman. What we're going to do is we're going to take this to my favorite part of the 3 Count Podcast, and that is the 3 Count Podcast 10 Count Questions. Mr. Quay, this is how it works. I'm going to fire off 10 questions at you rapid fast. Whatever your answer is, that's your answer.
Dope.
So we're going to put on an imaginary timer for added pressure.
All right. Oh man, I'm nervous.
And in the words of my favorite color commentator, Mike Goldberg, here we go. SmackDown or Raw?
SmackDown.
Favorite movie?
Spider-Man, either 1 or 2 or 3.
Okay, well, this is going to be easy then. Marvel or DC?
Marvel.
We can do favorite cartoon?
Spectacular Spider-Man.
Let's go. PlayStation or Xbox?
PlayStation.
Favorite actor?
Tobey Maguire.
Let's go. Favorite podcast?
3 Count Wrestling, baby.
That's right. 3 Count Podcast. That's what it is, baby. It's like we have like, it's right there. It's right here. It's right nominate one person that you want to see on this podcast.
Ian Bush.
Bet. We'll definitely want to get Ian on the show. And then last but not least, my favorite question asked every single person who comes on this show, favorite curse word.
Oh man, that's a tough one. I do tend to overuse the F-bomb, but I like a nice goddamn, throwing in a nice like, well, goddamn kid, or like goddamn, I like that one. I like that. That's a pretty fun one as well. I like hell. I say hell yeah a lot. I don't like hell, but I like saying hell yeah. So I guess that's kind of one of the big ones for me as well. But yeah, those probably my most used curse words.
Yeah, I agree. Those are all great.
And by F-bomb, I mean F-U-C-K. I just don't want to be too potent on this podcast right now.
Fuck is allowed to be said in this podcast.
All right, that's valid. That's valid.
It's not like we got monetized by YouTube anyway, so don't worry about it.
All right.
Bet, man. Well, those are all my questions for you, man. So the last thing I just need from you is to let our listeners and our viewers know where they can find you.
Well, you can find me on Instagram at MattQuay_AH. You can find me on Facebook at just Matt Quay. You can find me on TikTok, Matt Quay AH. You could also find me on Twitter. I believe it is also Matt Quay AH. So find me any of those places, AH for the American Hammer, and you'll be entertained, baby.
Well, there you go. He told you where you can find him, gave you all your handles, and you know what that means is like every part of a wrestling match, our favorite part of a wrestling match, we gotta take this home because this is the 3 Count Podcast presents Now Into Ring, and I'm your host Clifford Red Dog Miller, man that leads you up that mountain called wrestling. And like every good Sherpa, it's never about me; it's about who's entering. So who's entering the ring? You see him right there, the American Hammer himself. And you guys know what to do. Tune in to the next episode and be there, or you're really just waiting for to follow us on all of our social media platforms. You're following us on Spotify. You're subscribed to our YouTube channel. You're even checking us out on Amazon Music because we're there. You're leaving those, 5-star Frog Splash reviews. You're also checking us out on iHeartRadio or however their little jingle goes. I think that's how it works. You're buying all of our merch. You're telling your friends, your family, your enemies, your dogs, your cats, your pet bird, whatever, all about us. And you're doing all this stuff, or you're really just kind of waiting for this episode to end. You're waiting for the outro, and then you're choosing another episode to listen to.
That's a good choice.
Quay. What's going on? It is Clifford Red Dog Miller, the man that leads you up that mountain called wrestling. And what we need from you guys is just kind of show some support, right? We want you guys to go to our YouTube channel at the 3 Count Podcast, go on to our Twitch channel, 3 Count Pod, or even our Facebook page, 3 Count Podcast, and just give us a like, follow, subscribe, even give us a comment, right? Do all that cool stuff. Share it with your friends, share it with your family, share it with your enemies, right? Or you can even come talk to us and just chat us up, right? Find us on Twitter at 3Count_pod. Find us on IG and on TikTok at 3 Count Pod. Go ahead and leave us those comments. We want to hear from all of you guys. We're going to keep putting on videos and stuff like that. We want to keep making this content better, so we want your guys' support. Also, if you guys want to, go support us at prowrestlingtees.com/the 3 Count Podcast, or even find us on foryourwear.com. Give us the support. Show us your guys' love because we want to give it right back to y'all. So, in the meantime, love y'all.